it's really sad to see the white church and these white ministers. And I think of the George Whitfields, I think of the John Newtons, who were slave owners who endorsed slavery. And these are people who are supposed to be men of God, women of God, who sat idle and also endorsed that teaching that slavery was okay. And how do we kind of reconcile kind of, you have also these Christian men and women, African Americans, who were now not only going against culture, but having to go against the church?
Yeah. So, that's a really good question. So when you look at the history, there's so many conversations going on at this time. And one of the things that's happening is, in order to justify slavery, many of these white ministers, white pastors, they try to describe slavery as a rescue, right? We are actually rescuing Africans from their native country, their native land, bringing them to this Christian nation so they can receive the gospel, right? So that's one part of the conversation that's going on during this time. And so you have people like Lemuel Haynes, you have people like Pennington, Frederick Douglass, David Walker. You have all of these interpreters, African American interpreters, going against that, right? Pennington just comes out and says, God doesn't have to enslave us to give us the gospel. This argument is ludicrous. So you have this conversation going on where white Christianity, unfortunately, was willing to try to justify the unjustifiable and using scripture to do it. But at the same time, you have these African American interpreters saying, no, this is not of God. And you have people like Lemuel Haynes who comes out and says, actually, this is sin. This type of action, this is sin. And that's a move that many white interpreters during this time would not make. So you're right. They were bold in countering this notion that slavery was a blessing. And it was not only in the churches, it was in the media, if you would call the social media of that time. It was in the newspapers. I mean, it was a prevalent notion that slavery was actually a blessing to African Americans. So you have African Americans pushing back against that and saying, no, this is evil. This is sin. So you have that conversation going on during this time as well about the nature of slavery and how to talk about slavery, right? So you have the South trying to paint this beautiful rosy picture of slavocracy, but then you have people like Pennington, Harriet Jacobs, and others who escaped to the North, and they begin telling the story of what's actually happening during slavery and trying to open up the eyes of people in the North to what really is happening in the South. And so many of the slaves who escaped, their stories become evidence that what's happening in the South is not right and is not of God. So there's a lot of conversation going on in this time around slavery and what slavery means and what it is.
Hey, thank you so much for checking out this video clip from the Delgado podcast. To get more videos like this, simply subscribe here on YouTube. You can also download the full episode of each show on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, or your favorite podcast player. Take care.